think any of us guessed Kansas City this year. So that was kind of an exciting opportunity for us to for me personally, to get to know about a city I didn't know much about. So the morning of the competition, obviously the brief is released and the students have 2 weeks to come up with a full urban design and development proposal. So yeah, like I said, this was an opportunity for me to get to know a little bit about Kansas City. The site itself was just east of downtown. So Kansas City seems to be a city that's marked quite a bit at this point with its highways. There's a really extensive interstate network. It was formed at the confluence of the Kansas and Missouri rivers, right on the border of Kansas and Missouri. And I will specify that this was Kansas City, Missouri that we were looking at. So the city developed sort of south from the Missouri River. The core of the city is right next to, kind of on the bluff above the river. And our site in particular is just on the east side of the CBD, adjacent to a lot of public government buildings and next to Interstate 70. So you'll see when I mentioned that the city really developed south from the river, this is a map that the brief included that showed the value per acre. So it really is about the way that the city developed over time. The city seemed to be a fairly dense, transit-oriented city, a really extensive streetcar network, really rich cultural assets in their jazz and barbecue culture. And sometime in the middle of the century, they really started spreading. They started annexing a ton of land in the surrounding areas. They started building a ton of highways and their streetcar network went away. So it seems like the work of Kansas City now is about kind of undoing the work of the 20th century in some ways and trying to understand how to get back to a sustainable, walkable, transit-oriented sort of city that they originally had and are looking to get back to. A little bit more context about the site. The neighborhood just to the east of our site, across Interstate 70, is a lower income neighborhood. The brief spoke quite a lot about making sure that any development that we have here is not just for the wealthy, but is for all people of Kansas City. That makes sure to include a lot of the people in the neighborhood to the east as well. So even though the highway itself, I'm not sure if you can kind of see the way, we struggled a little bit with figuring out what to do adjacent to the highway. In some years, it's a really easy solution to just figure out how to cap it. There's a lot of highway in this city. So understanding where it makes sense to cap and where it doesn't was a sort of interesting design challenge for the students. You'll see the highway actually rises up. So it starts below grade on the north and then rises above grade to the south. So a sort of full cap isn't possible, but still trying to figure out how to make sure those connections between the CBD, the government center here with a lot of kind of open space, and obviously a challenge after hours to make sure that the street life was activated, and then to the neighborhood to the east. Some more context on the existing site. There was a lot of surface parking along here. It seemed to be very underutilized. Sort of typical adjacent to a highway site. The brief spoke quite a lot also about mobility, about making sure that we're not just designing to the car, again, because it seems like Kansas City is trying to undo a lot of the infrastructural work that they've done to accommodate single driver cars. To think about ways instead to cluster cars, to add other forms of mobility, to perhaps tag on to some of the new streetcar development that's happening. You'll see here, this is kind of our given site, is these blue blocks here. They were allowed to kind of go outside of the blue site into the larger red area here, the study area. But yeah, you'll see here, the challenge here is really, how do you connect from here across the government center to something like the Power and Light District, which is a quite successful mixed use development, to some of the downtown areas, and to the north-south streets, including Wyandotte, Main, and Broadway, which are the kind of 3 streets that are getting a lot of attention now in terms of transit. Deep dive into the site itself. So again, the brief every year assigns certain parcels that the students have to develop. In this particular case, the students didn't have to purchase the sites. They were sort of a given from the start. But again, any parcels outside of these 8 blocks, the students had to look at. Last thing I'll say is that the streets in downtown Kansas City are currently one-ways and they're quite wide. So that was a bit of a challenge. There's not immediate plans to turn this area back into 2-way streets, but you'll see that the students did think quite a lot about that. Alan, would you be able to share your final PDF from here?
Yes, I sure can.
Okay, great. I'll kick it back over to you then. Thank you so much.
Is this showing full screen? All right, here we go. Maybe. Do you guys see the full screen image or?
It's not full screen, Alan, but we can see the slideshow.
Okay. How about now?
Yeah, there you go.
Right. Great. So my name is Alan O'Connell. I'm in the Master of Urban Development, Urban Design program.
Alan,
Yep.
Alan, if I could interrupt, there's a gray box that's overlaid. Could you maybe move? I think you might have a chat box or something open.
Sure. Let me stop sharing for a sec.
Uh-oh.
Maybe while you're figuring that out, all the students could introduce yourselves.
Sure. My name is James Sasser. I'm in the Masters of Landscape Architecture program.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicholas Theophylactos. I'm in the Masters of Business Administration and the Masters of Architecture program at Kent State.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Remenschneider. I'm a student at Cleveland State University, and I'm in my final year of the Urban Planning and Development program.
Hi, I'm Chad Boston. I'm in the Master of Architecture and Master of Urban Design program at the CUDC or Cleveland Studios location at Kent State.
And Chad might not mention this, but this is his third year in a row doing the ULI competition. So we're really happy to have his veteran presence. That looks good, Alan. Thank you.
No more gray box?
Nope.
Thank you.
All right, great.
Nope, it looks.
All right. So as I mentioned before, I'm Alan O'Connell. I'm in the Master of Urban Design program, and I'm excited to present our project and what we developed. So Silicon Prairie, Kansas City is an active urban laboratory that develops technologies for the logistics industry. And so we envisioned a mixed income, mixed use development that sort of attacked 5 main issues that we saw and identified. One was a lack of a higher education institute. There's really not a large college in Kansas City. Just like every other city, there's a shortage of affordable housing and job opportunities for low-income families. The third thing is that there's a large food desert that the site is sort of located in the middle of. There's a low-income neighborhood to the east that doesn't have a grocery store for miles. As Kristen touched on, inadequate east-west connections. Everything in Kansas City sort of runs north to south. There's not really a sense of place in the East Village neighborhood. It's mostly just, surface parking lots. And so what we came up with is a strategy for connecting, innovating, and living that entails a technology institute, whereby the surrounding neighborhood serves as a living laboratory for autonomous vehicles, delivery, robotics, and drones. We included hundreds of new affordable housing units, and there will be jobs available as well for a wide range of skill levels. A new grocery store that will provide drone delivery to the underserviced neighborhoods located east to sort of expand the footprint of our grocery store and make sure that we're servicing areas that don't currently have it. We enhanced street circulation and the transit networks by connecting adjacent neighborhoods with downtown to the amenities through a large new park that was built over part of the highway to physically reconnect those neighborhoods and act as sort of a gateway. We also converted the roads, which are all currently one-way streets, to two-way and added street improvements such as street trees, bike lanes, and some other neighborhood amenities like 5G wireless internet, new parks, plazas. And so the connection, the Green Bridge, is located here. And again, the two-way streets connection. So this will show sort of how the reorientation of the transit network becomes a lot simpler. And so this is sort of the strategy when we were, drawing over top of the site, is sort of this triangle of these intersections of living, connecting, and innovating. And one of the main things that James will get into is sort of that we're celebrating Kansas City's heritage as the city of fountains, so that at each one of these intersection points, there's a sort of iconic fountain there. And then with the innovating part, we looked into existing companies that are located in Kansas City to think about what we could do with public-private partnerships to sort of help fund this new educational infrastructure and help promote Kansas City as a center of logistics and transit technology development. And so these laboratories, workshops, and an elevated tech walk will serve as sort of a real-world classroom for development of testing of these, robotics before they're deployed on the streets of Kansas City and beyond. We also discussed a partnership program between the Research Institute and local high schools to sustain sort of a pipeline for jobs and career advancement in the current and future economy.
Yeah, hi. So this is James Sasser, and like Alan said, connecting, innovating, and learning, the intersection of these three principles manifest physically as public spaces that act as essentially anchors of the site. These are, once again, Market Commons in the top right, and Vision Plaza to the northwest, and the Loop Link in the southeast. The overall design is formed around this access, emphasizing connection and collaboration. Unlike the ubiquitous gated private institution, the East Village has been transformed into this essentially barrier-free area to hone skills, develop social, physical, and different sorts of collaboration and connections. The area includes offices, workshops, collaboration spaces, and computing spaces open to the public as well as local industry. This project will act as the idea center of Kansas City, expanding across the entire Midwestern United States. The recent trends in technology and logistics and transportation have put this city in a unique position to provide jobs, education, and housing, and make connections east to west just as well as north to south. One of the largest features of the site is the bridge cap in the northeast of the site, connecting the proposed development and the traditionally underserved Paseo West neighborhood. The bridge acts as an extension of the local community center, moving outdoors, providing formal and passive recreation areas. This design move creates activity and movement, merging the two neighborhoods regardless of the existing highway system beneath. As you move west, you're invited into the Market Commons area, where social spaces and local produce markets act as an outdoor extension of the nearby multifamily housing development. This acts as an entrance to the elevated tech walk that permeates throughout the entire development. This elevated infrastructure piece acts as a linear park for residents as well as for students and employees. Entrances from the buildings onto the walkway and vice versa allow unrestricted movement throughout the area. The walkway also acts as a testing facility where local innovation is put to work. This includes any advances in transportation and logistics, such as drone delivery, small-scale robotics, and autonomous programming, some of the things that Alan has mentioned. A hotel, outdoor amphitheater, grocery store, exhibition space, academic labs, offices, rooftop patios, food production facilities, and research spaces create an inclusive, private, and public collaborative community. Next slide. A closer look into sort of an AXO view of these three spaces. Market Commons essentially acts as the main public gathering place for the neighborhood. This includes where local vendors can sell some of this local produce that is produced on site, certain ecological principles such as rainwater harvesting, but also social spaces where neighborhood can, knit together and provide a sense of place. Envision Plaza is closer to the academic campus, actually on the northwest side of the campus, and really acts as the main idea kind of sharing center. It's essentially envisioned as an amphitheater to host things like TED Talks, any sort of formal public speaking or informal public speaking. The tech walk above permeates through it, so you can watch from either the amphitheater seating or from above. The hotel is connected to the west to allow, seamless transitions from indoor and outdoors. It's screened with a fountain where people can kind of rest as a backdrop and act as kind of an enclosed area where ideas can be formed. Next slide. The loop link is the entrance into the Academic South entrance from the transit center. This is essentially the kind of the gate into Kansas City looking west. This will be the main kind of administrative institutional areas for the academic facilities. This includes collaboration spaces that are permeable, so you can actually see into and see people working and see all these ideas coming to life. The streetcar runs along this axis, and the tech walk actually has a second entrance on this side of the facility.
Good morning, everyone, again. So this is I guess a rendered view of the market commons, and I guess just a little more information. So everything is sort of color coded. So the students and the workers are the people and cars in blue. The residents are in yellow, and then the visitors are in green. And then sort of looking at the architecture, you have sort of the start of the tech walk in the background, and then in the very background, that's the drone HQ, and then sort of to the right in the middle ground, you have the housing in the yellow, which we just categorizing typologically with just basic balcony spaces. And then sort of looking at the market commons, you have the sort of the market in the background in the shadow, and then sort of another space where people can walk, hang out, and in this case, get some food from the food trucks. Next slide, please. And this is sort of looking at the north-south section. Like I said before, yellow is the multifamily housing, orange is the not food production, orange is the light manufacturing, and then blue is the sort of academic. And this is just to illustrate sort of the typological, the topographical change, sorry. And yeah, all right, next slide.
So it was really important for us to think through the way that residents and students and visitors would be utilizing this space and kind of thriving in this neighborhood. As Kristen mentioned at the beginning, one of the items set forth in the brief was that we were really supposed to focus on equitable development and making this affordable and accessible to many different types of families and individuals. So the way that we conceptualized that was to think about a family moving to this neighborhood kind of right at its inception. We thought about how the parents would be able to easily access jobs either within the neighborhood or in the rest of downtown, which they can get to either by the public transit, which there are lots of buses that come through, and the BRT is easily accessible as well, or even within the neighborhood itself, the jobs that we're creating through the grocery store, the office space, and the educational facilities. We also thought about how it could provide some advancement, some career advancement for their children. In the example that we've given, the student attends the nearby technical high school and gets some experience in at a mechanics shop on the site, and then is able to take classes, maybe even get his degree, and then end up working in one of the research and development businesses on site. And finally, that it's an easy place for their family who lives in the adjacent neighborhood to come and visit them, that they have incentive to come and access the amenities that are there. And basically that is just a great place for this family and any other families or individuals that move to the neighborhood to thrive and to get everything that they need here, or to be able to access it easily through the connections that we've made with the rest of the city. Along the same line, we thought about some ways that the site would be used at all times of day throughout the whole year. Again, along the lines of livability, connection, and innovation. So we thought about things like fitness classes on the tech walk, concerts and festivals at the different nodes, a farmer's market and bike safety demonstrations that could, again, kind of promote that connection, and to reinforce the innovation technology demonstrations for the residents of Kansas City to sort of show what's being done at the education institution, and also classes just for the general public to, again, kind of promote that career advancement.
I know, Suki. No, I'm not making waffles over. Mommy.
All right, hello everyone. Now going into the financial overview of the project. So the strategy of the project was looking at introducing a diversity of uses through the entire project to safeguard against market fluctuations. To start, like Rachel mentioned, we wanted to focus on more so the living, creating condos for sale housing and apartments to get people into the site. And looking at the site right now, the current site value is just under 50 million. And then looking at the projected site value going upwards of 920 million. Without any financing and pre-financing, the unleveraged IRR of the project is about 11.5%. And then looking after financing, partnerships, and then utilizing the loans and grants and incentives in the area, we predict that the project can get upwards to a 30% IRR. The development cost for the project is looking at about just under 750 million, and the total square footage for the entire project is 2.5 million square foot. So next slide. So the phases, like mentioned, would be living in the first phase, focusing on sale housing and creating a neighborhood to get people moved onto the site, and also to produce revenue streams for the or revenue for the future phases. The next phase, innovating, would be look at utilizing, creating an educational facility, like mentioned, that was absent in the area by partnering with some of the other colleges that might be in the area that aren't as prominent, and then also partnering with tech campuses. Kansas City is one of the first areas with a fiber optic network, so utilizing the tech industries there as a partnership to create an educational facility to help create this full neighborhood. And then lastly, connecting that to the rest of Kansas City, downtown and the surrounding neighborhoods by utilizing light industrial uses, creating parking to allow people to come in and experience the site more from outside of the area, and then furthermore create the Korean Bridge crossing to help directly connect with the Payo West neighborhood adjacent to the site. Next slide. So the first phase, living, looks at producing to the north side. This would be over a 2-year period, the north side in the first year, and then the south here in the second year. Creating and completing the existing apartments there. We were supposed to work, you can see the grayed out one in the center there was East Village Apartments. So thinking about that being in the middle of our site and then complementing that and completing that neighborhood to the north, and producing on the inward block for sale, and then the outward of the block having more rental apartments. So the equity putting in, this would be where the developer puts in the most equity, and he would invest that in an opportunity fund investment at the beginning of the project. And then this also allows us to utilize parking that's existing on the site to create revenues for the first 2 years for pre-development. And then looking at loans, we divided up the loans in terms of condo loans and then construction and permanent loans. Overall, and then also the federal LITech, we considered paying that back as a loan from the understanding when we read through the project. It only takes about 65% of the total value of the first phase. And then the subsidies looks at using a community development block. This is to help fund the grocery store that would allow and address the food desert issue, and then supplement delivery of food items. And then we also found in the specific zone a construction sales tax that would help reduce construction costs for the project. For phase, sorry, no, you can go to the next slide. For phase 2, innovating, this would be our major educational portion where we start completing and then getting in all the education infrastructure, and then also creating more affordable housing to supplement the rest of the, or fill in the blocks around the area. So in this one, had a lot of, or the most of where the funding comes into play, because this is a more expensive, the education is an expensive use to use, or to build, sorry. So looking here, we utilize an EB5 loan, industrial revenue bonds that are available from Kansas City, new market tax credits, and then also look at the public-private partnership. we're thinking that this would be between T-Mobile and then the UKAMC campus, so University of Kansas, Missouri, because T-Mobile has multiple programs that already look like are already investing in communities, and we believe that we could leverage that. And then in terms of subsidies, there's a Kauffman Foundation grant available. This is similar to the Cleveland Foundation. And we believe if we create a partnership and then the developer goes in on this, we could also utilize a Kauffman Foundation grant to help create this partnership to get this funded. And then there's several Missouri tech companies that are offering smaller grants that you can see at the bottom there. In this, I'm sorry, I didn't talk about the uses in the last phase. If I could go through that really quick. In terms of the phase 2, this one focuses, it would include hotel use in here, where we would build the hotel to allow people to come and visit the educational facilities. And then the education would focus more on the tech. And then this is also where we would start integrating a lot more office spaces integrated within those educational areas, and then filling in and completing the block of the last phase. Next slide. And then the final phase would be focusing more on our light industrial uses, and then creating some of the larger office spaces to help supplement and bring in the tech companies. So the light industrial uses would complete the block here, and then using federal Department of Transportation contributions and the State Department of Transportation contributions to help fund about half of the price of the cap here. There's several caps that are proposed to go up in the area in the north and south, and we believe we can leverage some of those funds to help build us with our cap because it's smaller in the grand scheme of things compared to the rest of them. Next slide. And then that's completes the finances. I'll let Alan finish off the presentation for us.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, essentially, over the course of 10 years and all the phases here, what it adds up to is a new neighborhood, or it really fills in and completes the existing neighborhood that becomes an integral part of the future of Kansas City, the future of logistics innovation, and sort of sets the stage for, an economic driver that'll sort of drive the city and the region into the future and over the next couple decades. And so, yes, thanks for listening. This was our final board.
Great, thank you, team. Does anyone in the audience have any questions for the students?
I do. Nice work, you guys. It's, really the extent of your work is very evident. You just have to look at the boards and you can calculate the hours it took to put together this project. I'm wondering if you thought at all about, kind of what the market drivers, I'm sure you did for the project, but, kind of given some of the, kind of interesting demographic trends that are happening nationally with a more distributed workforce and, kind of people able to work for, kind of coastal companies, but be anywhere. Are you anticipating that this project might be driven by in-migration from more high value real estate communities? So people, real estate refugees from Manhattan or from San Francisco. Do you see positioning this development as a way to both support the neighborhood and the people who are already there, but also to be able to attract people from beyond the region? Or is your goal here primarily about the, kind of Kansas City, the Twin City region, and who, kind of you could build a neighborhood around?
I can start answering this, at least in the general approach. Silicon Prairie isn't, I'm sure people know this, isn't a new concept. People, like you said, from Manhattan and San Francisco have been moving to Austin, for real estate expansion, company growth, et cetera. So we're taking that approach and applying it to Kansas City, but mixing that in with the historic background that Kansas City traditionally has been the center of the United States and has been this major gateway. I know St. Louis is called the gateway to the West, but essentially Kansas City acts as the centerpiece of America. So it's providing real estate, it's providing, you know, a sort of place to go, but it also naturally acts as a magnet in terms of shipping and logistics, and some of the recent, you know, trends that they've built on makes this possible.
And then in addition to that, yes, leveraging possible tech companies moving from other areas would be a big interest in that. For example, naming it Silicon Prairie looks at trying to leverage and take people from the Silicon Valley, because it is very expensive there. And the rents in Kansas has been compared to Cleveland in terms of being low and then having higher incomes, and then it being centrally located at the heart looks at very large incentive for people coming in, especially with being one of the first cities to create a fiber optic network for tech companies. There's a lot of incentives for people to move there with cheaper rents, central location, and the infrastructure that some other cities just don't offer.
Yeah, I think that 2 years ago, this argument would have been, you know, maybe a little bit less compelling, but now what we're seeing happening, I think that your development is very well positioned. Layer on top of that, the climate question, although I suppose Kansas City is in the tornado belt, but it doesn't have the, probably the, you know, kind of some of the larger scale sea level rise, you know, those kinds of questions that are affecting the coast. So maybe it's relatively stable, but, you know, I guess that's still to be determined. So thank you. I really, I applaud your work.
I want to also say I'm so impressed at what you've accomplished in a couple of weeks. You know, a team that really hasn't worked together on projects. This is so comprehensive. So congratulations, and I hope it does very, very well. I think that you've accomplished a number of very important things. Linking is really there, linking the neighborhoods, and I think tying together the different areas, integrating different aspects, the innovation and also the inhabitation, I think is fantastic. And I think your nodal points of interest that are themed and I think seem very reasonable in terms of what they would be doing, I think are fantastic. So the innovation zone theme, I think, is really a fine one and can catch some attention, and the innovation prairie. What I'm wondering about, and maybe I zoned out, is you've got this really this feature that is this raised deck, this loop. And I'm not sure you made a really clear case for that. I think it's all outside. I mean, I can really see it being something that's very positive in terms of a driver for linking across blocks, linking together innovation zones, or the partnership between the private and maybe public investment or different kinds of innovation networks. But could you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we it certainly is meant to link the headquarters, the various offices of these companies that we envision partnering with the institution, as well as it links. You know, it's not just a test track. It's not. People on the team hate me calling it, but it's a multi-purpose track that is not just for testing of robotics, but it's also for leisure. So people who live at the northern part of the site, if they wanted to use the track to maybe have nice views of the city or visit a rooftop cafe, they can use the track. So we used it. It has two functions: to connect the living part of it, to connect the business part where we have sort of the clustering of companies, and then the institution part with the transit center. But it also functions also as that sort of like outdoor classroom. Yeah, I get what you're saying. We probably could have done a better job as like telling that story of how it links all that.
Well, it's just such an important feature. You know, I think if anything, and I think you've done a great job, but if anything, I think a little more clarity about what it is would would help the project, you know, so.
How does it function with respect to the robotics?
Hey, Alan, could you show the picture again, our very first one?
In response to how it functions in terms of robotics, it's a lot of these autonomous technologies are built on not exactly, you know, NASCAR style tracks. They're meant to mimic real world kind of environments. So the next best thing to, you know, an actual street is trying to, you know, create little nodes that these either small vehicles or small technologies have to, you know, really kind of account for. And, you know, they won't hurt anything. They won't cause any traffic on this elevated bridge, but you'll know if it, you know, if it runs into a bench, it needs to go back to the drawing board.
In addition to that, the track looks more at focusing on the logistics aspect and utilizing the logistic companies to test this as a first step. And then the lanes and several of the connecting to the other neighborhoods on the first or the ground level. So upgrading it from the track being, that's where you first test them, going down to the ground level, and then utilizing that to connect to farther neighborhoods. So as the testing and research updates, it goes and then upgrades to certain aspects. So the track, you can start seeing the beginnings of research, the ground level and some of our nodal areas, the updates of that research, and then looking at expanding that and using research as a mean to link and connect other people using these autonomous tracks. In addition to several of the points mentioned before, connecting the living to our business areas and acting as a pedestrian path. And then also there's an aspect and thought of like pandemic and COVID, giving those people those areas to walk and separate from each other on ground level, up above, and then just having several open areas for people to be able to walk around and distance from each other.
Yeah, and
so, oh, sorry,
I
go
was
ahead.
just going to say, just to supplement that, we knew that we wanted this development to be sort of an active urban laboratory, but the thought of prototypes sort of mingling with people on the sidewalk, we kind of wanted to give sort of an in-between the classroom and the real world, and that sort of is what the track represents. So it's sort of an area where developing technologies are, so that we don't have this dystopian situation where there's robots running into people on the sidewalk.
Great, thanks.
So we had two questions online. One, I know that coordination can be challenging with this competition. Did you feel that working together remotely was beneficial or more of a detriment? And I guess to build off of that, someone else had asked, what's the greatest challenge that you had faced?
Yeah, we were definitely more remote than probably previous years. We were able to get together for some of the key decisions and key, you know, trace exercises, but yeah, it was difficult. It was something that we all had to kind of work through. We used a couple different kind of avenues like Miro and Zoom and all that kind of things. It's with such a large area, it's hard to build consensus, especially in a short amount of time frame when you know you have a certain amount of deliverables that need to be produced. So getting everybody on, you know, the same page where we thought we had a strong, compelling argument was, in my opinion, more difficult when you're not in the same room.
Yeah, I don't really know what to compare it to. Chad might be able to speak to the difficulty of this year compared to previous years a bit better.
I'll just say from my observations that you guys did a really great job despite those challenges of coordinating with each other and iterating. I mean, I think the fact that you all went through multiple iterations of the site plan, I think Dean Mister's comments about the tech walk and, you know, some of the, you guys were dealing with a lot of complexity. And I think you refined it sort of as much as is reasonable in the time that you had, given that you were all working remotely. So that's kind of where I noticed most of the challenge of the work from past years. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear what Chad has to say about that, given his experience.
Um, yeah, no, this site was definitely unique compared to last projects in terms of, I mean, the site itself was essentially a blank slate, so it became very challenging on how to create the character and determine what goes on that site when all of the blocks are the same and there's no identifiable characters to utilize on the site. And then furthermore, the site's trapped in with the highway and the central business district, and then it's hard to connect to anything, and then it's hard to determine what goes there because it's hard to connect to anything. So trying to create a story or something, and then trying to latch onto some kind of thing that could be identifiable to the city and connect to the Paseo West, make the north-south connections and connect to the central business district.
I have two questions for Chad if we're done with the previous questions. So Chad, what were some of the biggest challenges you came across when building out the Performa, thinking about phasing and financing? That's the first question. Second one is, what would you maybe do differently now that the Performa is built out? If you had more time, would you change the phasing? Would you change the financing? Is there anything you would do differently?
Yes, most definitely. So I mean, going into the Performa, financing was difficult, trying to find the funding available, and then trying to find and utilize like who would be a private partner, private public partnership, sorry. And then trying to find some grants and whatnot to utilize and be able to fund the project realistically and within reason. And then trying to get the developer equity so that it's small enough to be reasonable for the project and just make some of the funding look more realistic. In terms of just the figuring out the pro forma, I mean, it just took time in terms of linking all of that. In terms of setting it up, if everything was set up the way that I wanted in terms of phasing, I think I would have spaced some of the years apart in terms of construction to allow some more income to come in instead of 6 straight years of construction, noticing that requires a lot of funds for 6 straight years, and then 10 those years with construction tend to be negative cash flows. So trying to absorb the funding and find funds for heavy years in terms of construction costs. So separating the phasing. And then I think that was the main thing in terms of construction and phasing. Maybe diversifying some of the apartments into some of the later phases. It was very heavy in the condos in the beginning, and the reason of that was for the revenues, but maybe dividing and separating that so it would allow for better absorption would be my thought.
Thank you, Chad.
Great. Any other last minute questions?
I'd like to add not a question, but if I can, I'd just like to echo the audience's remarks and congratulations for the team. You did a fantastic job this year and obviously faced a very unique challenge in doing that. So I commend you just for that alone. But also wanted to add to it that this is a very important milestone in your graduate careers, and I congratulate you for taking the challenge. And I was a student in this in 2012, learned a great deal from it, and I hope you did as well. And you'll take this with you in your careers and really benefit from it. So congratulations and a job well done.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who has attended. Kristen and Terry and Ken for leading this program. All of the mentors, really appreciate your time. Greg, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, I think I might be, Terry, maybe, I think you and I may be like the folks who have been involved in the most of these. And I think this was clearly one of the best I've seen. Had enjoyed the opportunity when we talked with the team during their finance review. They were farther ahead at that point than any I'd seen. And I think this is great work, and I appreciate all you did, and especially overcoming it with the whole collaboration via electronic means. It's really a feather in your cap. So congratulations.
Hopefully in a month or two, we're gathering back to go over some revised plans for the project if they make it to the final round.
Yeah, the timeline is late February that they will be kind of reviewing all the submissions and announcing finalists. So traditionally, we've had to kind of keep, a pretty tight lid on the work until then, because you can get disqualified if you share it on social media. But at that point, I think we're really looking forward to seeing where this goes. Yeah, I'm going to echo the congratulations to you guys for taking this on, especially starting a week before the semester even started, really hitting the ground running. So it was really a joy to get to work with you all.
And also to thank Melanie and all of our friends at ULI. I mean, we literally couldn't do it without you. So thank you. Thank you for supporting our student team.
Yeah, I'll echo that. It's a great partnership, and we really appreciate it. This is very important for the students. And I'm just going to add that I have not seen in the 3 or 4 years I've been attending these, what I believe is the best financial analysis that we saw this year, the Performa. So really well done. I think you've got a great shot at this year.
Great. Well, thank you guys again for your time. This conversation has been recorded, so we'll be sure to save that. And it's actually a great opportunity for us to be able to record these events, although we can't get together in person. So hopefully next year we all get to see each other in person like we typically do over breakfast. But we really appreciate everybody's time and anybody who jumped in to watch this presentation today. So thank you again to Kristen and Terry and Ken and all of the mentors and everybody involved. We're always very excited to have the Hines competition and for the partnership that we have. So we're very excited to watch this presentation. So everybody have a great rest of your day and a great weekend, unless there were any other questions that people wanted to chime in with. But thank you again for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thank you all. Congratulations.